94.4 FM, the Friday Sports Show. Your host is Petruzzi in the Louisville local area and around the world. And we're very fortunate show to have some of those fascinating guests across a wide range of areas, topics, some of those leading people in their fields. Today we've got a fascinating guest who's going to give us a bit of an insight into women lead the way in disclosed non-monogamous relationships. So it's pretty interesting stuff. So our guest today, Christoph Kramer, he's going to sort of give us the rundown on some of the research. Christoph, welcome to the show. Great to have you on board.
It's a pleasure being here with you. Thank you for having me.
So, Christoph, tell us a bit more about the study about women leading the way in disclosed non-monogamous relationships.
Yes, and we were somewhat surprised. So, Ashley Madison started now 21 years ago as a community platform for people looking for discreet extramarital affairs. And we're particularly successful in the UK, where it's our number one European market, where we have over 2.5 million members that have signed up since we launched. But over the last few years, we've seen a really interesting change, if not to say even somewhat of a revolution happening, and it's women who are leading the way. And that is more and more people engaging in disclosed non-monogamous relationships.
And why do you think it is that sort of women, is there any sort of understanding based on the research why women would sort of lead the way in that, Christoph?
Well, it seems that there is some fundamental difference between the genders in that respect. And we did a survey beginning of the year where we also asked our members, what kind of things are you looking for? What are the trends for 2023? And 3/4 of the men said that they were still looking for discrete affairs, whereas the percentage for women was a lot lower. And we see now also in this current survey that about a little more than 1 in 4 of our female members are currently in a disclosed non-monogamous relationship, compared to only 14% of the men. Also, when it comes to talking about their disclosed non-monogamous relationship, women seem to be a lot more open than the men. The majority of women, 57%, have told at least someone in their circle about the different relationship model that they are living in, whereas only 35% of the men do the same. So it seems that women do want to try something different to the established monogamous marriage or relationship couple model that is still prevalent in our society today. And they also want to talk about it. They want to live it in an open way. They want to live their sexuality in a more open way. I think some of the other debates that are going on in society right now when it comes to gender identity, sexual orientation, sexuality are all linked. And it seems that women want to do it different this time and don't want to just live it behind their own closed 4 walls or doors, but want to do so without shame, openly in public.
No, that's really interesting, Christoph. And in terms of the sort of research, I know obviously sort of like, the world's a changing place and relationships have been sort of viewed at least sort of, conventionally, traditionally in a certain way. But where does that sort of, maybe that's the scope of the conversation, but where does that sort of take the relationships at the moment in the future? Do you think the trend is going to be more and more? Do you think we'll see more non-monogamy? How do you think things are going to go?
Well, I think it's obvious in terms of the fact that infidelity has existed ever since monogamy was invented, because biological studies, scientific studies clearly say that mankind, humans, are not meant to be monogamous from a biological evolutionary point of view. So it is something that we have somewhat socially, artificially created. And also divorce rates, over the last decades have gone up. Less people are getting married. So it seems that the monogamous marriage, which still to this day is really the only accepted relationship model in a social and legal model, or from a social or legal point of view, I think has a little bit its days counted and may no longer be the only, or hopefully will no longer be the only model that is accepted in our society, because it does not seem to correspond to at least a good portion of the population, maybe even the majority. And we've accepted that humans are diverse and multicultural, and yet we are still clinging to just one relationship model. So I think we will see more diversity in the relationship models in the future. I think we've also attached too many expectations nowadays, over the last few decades or maybe even the last century, to this idea of relationship to our partner. The expectation is that your partner has to be your best friend, fantastic lover, great cook, successful in their job, a great parent, and I don't know how many other things. Now, that is completely utopian that one person can fulfill that every day of the week for an entire year, 24 hours a day. But that doesn't mean that that person is not a great partner for you, but it may be that for certain things, whether they be on an intimate level or on an emotional level, you sometimes at least need to outsource certain things in order to be fulfilled, because also if you're fulfilled, then you're happy, and you also are able to give that happiness and transmit that happiness to the people that are close to you, your partner, your family, and your circle of friends, and maybe even you're more productive at work.
That's really interesting, Christoph. And what I find interesting there is like obviously like from a biological perspective, and how we're wired as human beings, and is monogamy natural? I mean, it might be for some people, it might not be for others, each to their own. But I suppose sort of listening to you speak there, what I find quite interesting is obviously the research suggests that sort of women are leading the way, but my guess is that sort of anecdotally sort of more men are choosing not to sort of bother to commit themselves to relationships. And you kind of sense that, obviously you mentioned divorce rates. I mean, divorce rates are statistically initiated more by women, and obviously now they're sort of leading the way in monogamy. If you've got people sort of like listening to the show, for example, like men, for example, probably sort of becoming disillusioned with the traditional relationship, because I think, if they are sort of traditionalists, at least in that sense, they're kind of thinking, okay, well, the stats are against me. So I guess the question is that, I mean, the future sort of relationships, you've kind of touched on that, but does it sort of illustrate why, I know once again, it's probably another conversation of a day, why more and more men are just deciding, it's just difficult to commit to a relationship, these days?
Well, I think it may be portrayed in such a way, but in the end, relationships have always been work. It's about open communication, and that actually, interesting enough, because we asked both people that are members that are currently in a non-monogamous disclosed relationship, and those that currently are not, but maybe are having affairs, or are maybe looking to have an affair, or a non-monogamous disclosed relationship. And the interesting thing is that both groups said that the most important thing for a disclosed non-monogamous relationship, but I think it holds true for any kind of relationship, is, and it was almost 3 out of 4 that said so, was open communication, and then the second most important thing was to agree to mutual terms. And I think that holds true for any kind of relationship. And whether it's monogamous, non-monogamous, disclosed or non-disclosed, I think those are sort of basic facts. And I think often, because of the stress of everyday life, we forget about the importance of communication and of also revisiting maybe terms that we have agreed to, because things may change. But in the end, it's not a magic formula. It's really quite basic. We just have to remember to do it. And I think that if we do put in the work, again, whether it's for a non-monogamous, a monogamous relationship, whether it's disclosed or non-disclosed, I think then we'll all be happier.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And I suppose in one sense too, Christoph, when you think about sort of the marriage and how long it's been around for, I don't know for how many years or when it was first sort of created, but when you think about our lifespan now, let's say if someone met somebody, even like late teens, early 20s, to be that person if the average age expectancy is about 78, 80 years of age, it's a long time, isn't it, really, whichever way you look at it. I'm not sort of dismissing people who are together, great if they're happy. But these days, women can make money from work. It wasn't always the case in years gone by with obviously more and more equal rights. And and they can sort of make their own way in the world. And I suppose in the sense that the person you are at 20, you're probably going to be different at 30 anyway. So it kind of makes sense to me that sort of people might look outside or maybe decide, you know what, this relationship's run its course and I can move forward. But I think for so long, people probably had pressure on themselves, social pressure, peer pressure to stay together. Do you think that's a valid assessment that maybe in years gone by, the social pressure of being together, even if you weren't happy, was a big thing?
Well, absolutely. I think both the social, and in the end also the financial pressure, if we're talking about specifically women, no? Because I don't know exactly what the situation was like in the UK, but I know that in Germany and France and Spain, for example, in continental Europe, up until at least the beginning of the 70s and maybe even mid-70s, women were not allowed to open a bank account without the approval or permission of their husband or to even start a job. And so besides the social pressure that might have been harder or more severe in the past, there were also some very real everyday financial issues of what opportunities do I have, how can I care for myself and maybe also for my kids if I separate myself. And so I think especially women endured then in relationships that maybe weren't the best and in which they weren't happy anymore. Also, historically and traditionally, women have been castigated and punished far more severely for affairs or infidelity than men. So I think there it's positive that we're at least moving towards, and we've done some important steps towards more equality. And in the end, I think if we're both equal partners and if we openly discuss our needs, our preferences, and have an open communication and then agree to mutual terms, then we can construct a relationship model that works for two partners and then can also work for 50, 60, 70 years. Who knows, given now the life expectancy that we have.
No, definitely. That's well put, Christoph. So if anyone wants to, I'm mindful of time, it's been really fascinating speaking to you. If anyone wants to know more about the study, Christoph, is there any way you can signpost them if they're listening in, wondering when they can read more about the study?
I mean, obviously we have an app both for iOS and Android in the respective stores, and otherwise they can also just come visit our site, ashleymadison.com, and sign up to become a member. All you need is an email address, a working one, and then explore our non-monogamous community that has been around for over 20 years.
Thanks for your time, Christoph. It was interesting speaking to you, and thanks for being a guest on the show.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.